Hello everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Night, your favorite Reddit reading channel. Today we are back on our /paranormal. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I truly believe that the old lady who watered my front garden plants was either a ghost or some sort of spirit. I thought this would be interesting to share with you all, as this memory has recently been on my mind. This took place at my old house, 3 or so years ago now. Though nowadays I find it strange, with what happened, there is some comfort in this memory. There was an older woman who would water my front garden plants. I saw her the first time in the summertime, watering my roses. I went out to say hello, she didn't respond, only smiled. She had her own green watering can and always wore the same brown pleated coat. I'd see her once or twice a week. I would wave from my front window, she'd smile and wave back. I'd try to speak to her a few more times, but she would never respond. When I met my partner, I'd tell him about the older lady. Once when I came home, I drove in and saw her watering the plants and smiled and waved, as did she. I went inside and remember hurrying my boyfriend to the window so he could wave at her. It took me maybe 30 seconds to get into the window, and once we got there, she was gone. I went outdoors with my boyfriend, and surely, the soil was wet, but looking up and down the street, she was nowhere to be seen. This happened a few more times, where I'd see her, try to get my boyfriend to see her, and a few seconds later, she was gone, yet the plants were always watered. We moved out from the house some years ago, with my boyfriend never having seen her. Before we moved, the last time I saw her, I told her goodbye and thanked her for watering my flowers. And that was that. I truly believe she was some sort of spirit, maybe she lived there before. I'm not sure, but I'm glad to have met her. Got lost in the woods for 8+ hours as a little girl, and saw something unexplainable. I grew up in a densely forested rural area in central Virginia, and like most kids my age, 10, at the time of this story, I spent a lot of time playing in and around the woods. My best friend and I had found a creek one day while exploring different deer trails through the woods. This creek we happened on was a very rare find and the perfect spot for us to play. It was wide and deep enough to swim around in and had nice, soft mossy banks on either side to rest on after we had tired ourselves out. The water was cool and clear, no copperheads, and no mosquitoes because the water was constantly running. We were psyched. After a few hours of swimming we had to walk back home for lunch, but made plans to pack lunch the next day so we could have a picnic on the creek banks and spend the whole day there. The next morning we set out for the woods at around 1 p.m., planning to have the picnic first and swim after. We entered at the same spot we had the previous day and followed what we thought was the same deer trail. It was not. At the point where we should have found the creek, we walked into a small clearing that was covered in huge, thick ferns. We had definitely never walked past this before. So, being both hungry and tired of walking, we decided to eat in the clearing. We left and played around there for a while, spitting watermelon seeds at each other from our lunch. It was an absolute blast and we were both in wonderful, giddy moods. That all changed, however, as soon as we packed up and set back out to find the creek. As we walked on, the woods started to feel darker and colder. We got skittish and I noticed my friend kept whipping her head around to look behind us. After about a half hour of walking we came up on what looked like an entire overgrown bathroom. Sink, toilet, and bathtub all sitting arranged together and covered in ivy. It's pretty common to find weird shit like this in the middle of the woods, so we just walked on and made jokes to lighten the mood, calling it Bigfoot's bathroom. After another hour of walking, and not seeing anything we recognized, we started to panic. Instead of trying to reach the creek we were now just trying to find our way back home or out of the woods, at least. I told her we should follow the sun and eventually we would come up on a road or someone's property where we could find help. She insisted on another way and we began yelling at each other out of fear and, let's be honest, little girl bossiness. I told her if she thought she was so right she should just go her way and we would see who got out first, so we split up. Now as an adult I fully acknowledge I was being a stubborn brat, and also, an idiot. Worst possible thing we could have done. Not 10 minutes after splitting up I began to hear someone walking maybe 100 feet behind me. Thinking it was my friend deciding to go my way after all, I slowed down so she can catch up to me. Instead, whatever it was matched my pace. I slow down, it slows down. I stop, it stops. This went on for hours. The whole time I was going back and forth on whether or not it was in my head or there was really something following me. I picked up a big stick, swung it a few times to make sure it was sturdy if I had to hit someone, and trucked on. As it began to get dark, I came up on something that made my heart sink into my stomach. It was Bigfoot's bathroom. I had just walked in a huge circle, for hours, despite being 100% sure I was following the setting sun west the entire time. Confused and frustrated, I sat down on a log and just screamed my little heart out while smacking my whoop-ass stick repeatedly into the ground. As I tried to collect myself, I heard the footsteps again walking up on me from behind. I called out my friend's name as loud as I could. No answer. Then, after a short pause, the steps began to run towards me. I jumped up and booked it fast as I could in the opposite direction. Now, this is the truly horrifying part which I typically omit while telling people this story. As I was sprinting through the darkening woods, I began to hear what I thought were church bells. I looked up to see the darkest, deepest cloud I have even seen in my life. In the middle it was so black it was like looking into the night sky, and the dark gray around it seemed to be swirling. It gave me a horrible feeling to look at, almost like the nausea you get when looking through binoculars too long. What sickened me further is that I realized the sound of the bells was coming through the hole in the cloud. They were deafeningly loud, I mean really booming out of this thing. When I realized this, I stopped dead in my tracks. I felt a sense of absolute and overwhelming dread that has gone unmatched in all my 24 years on this planet. Something in my head began screaming that if I did not run away from whatever the hell that cloud was, no one would ever see me again, I would be gone. I did not want to run toward the thing chasing behind me either though, so I made a sharp right and took off away from both. It was now completely dark and I was running blind through the woods, smacking through branches, wheezing, and tripping every few feet for what seemed like another hour. Until I smacked into something low and flew over it, hitting the ground so hard all the air in my lungs was knocked out of me. As I lay there trying to recover, I realized I couldn't hear the bells anymore. Then my eyes adjusted more to the dark, and I realized what had just made me go ass over teeth was an old fence. Grabbing hold of it, I prayed it would lead me to a farm, and sure enough it did. I walked up over a hill about a mile to the back of the farmhouse, explained what had happened, and the farmer graciously gave me a ride back home. I was covered head to toe in scrapes, oozing blood, and more exhausted than I had ever been in my life, but I was finally safe. It was past 9 p.m. when I finally walked through my front door. My friend had gotten back shortly after we split and figured I had as well, so hadn't told anybody I was lost, and my family just figured I was still out after dark, which wasn't uncommon for me. They were shocked when I walked in beat up and crying. Nobody had been looking for me at all. To this day I wonder how long they would have waited to come find me if I hadn't been lucky enough to find the fence, and if it would have been too late. I believe the ghost of a suicide victim tried to get me to kill myself too. I shared this story in a comment in an Ask Reddit post, then realized it would probably be appreciated here. This is a true story. Trigger warning for suicide. My husband and I moved into an apartment a couple years ago where I started to basically go insane. It always felt like someone was watching me and I became horrifically depressed. I would get so sad that sometimes I would even just spontaneously start crying, and I often fantasized about hanging myself from the rafters in this one room. I would sometimes hear the rafters creaking and go in there, then imagine myself hanging in front of the window being the cause of the creaking. I had been depressed in the past, but this was something on another level. I was seriously suicidal, despite being happily married and genuinely enjoying life before moving into this place. I thought that I had some serious mental illness that was emerging. Several months into living there, our neighbor, a sweet old woman that had lived in the building for decades, told us that a young woman hung herself from the rafters in that room in the late 80s. She was discovered by a man walking his dog who saw her hanging in front of the window. Our neighbor said she was a very unfriendly person, who kept to herself and never had anyone over. According to her, every single one of the female tenants in their mid-20s to early 30s that have moved in since her suicide never renewed their leases past the first year and all seemed troubled, as she put it, while they lived there. I was 27 at the time, the exact same age she was when she died. My husband and I noped the FCK out of there pretty much immediately after we learned this. We still had a few months left on our lease, so we had to pay double rent during that time, but it was worth it. Literally the day we got out, my mental health recovered completely and has been back to normal ever since. I believe with all my heart that she was there in that apartment with us, and for whatever reason, she wanted me to repeat history and endure the same fate as her. Okay. Ghosts are real. I am right now sitting in my front porch smoking a cigarette. I cannot bring myself to go back inside my house. There is someone in there. Just over 2 months ago I moved into a new house after losing nearly everything to COVID. I won't go into details or draw this out. Typing this out is making my eyes well and every hair on my body stand straight up, but goddammit I saw a human-shaped shadow in my walk-in closet. Am I going crazy? Maybe, but I know that I am not at the same time. Okay, this is what happened. I am laying in my bed browsing Reddit, and from the corner of my eye I catch movement coming from my closet. Within literal milliseconds I turn and see someone standing inside of it, looking right at me. You guys. I flipped the frick out, sprung up, ran out of my room, slammed the door, and grabbed a kitchen knife. I yelled and screamed about calling police, that I had a knife, and basically acted like a scared monkey. No response. After about a minute of yelling and realizing I had left my phone in my bedroom, to call 911, I slowly peeked in. There was simply nothing there, you guys. Nothing. No one could have gone anywhere. I'm freaking pissed and terrified about this. I saw this person. I saw their shape. Their movement. Their arms. There was a humanoid figure in my closet, and that is all I know. What to do from here? Update number 1, nothing at all. Back in the house. Update number 2, I took some advice from some of you, and feeling very silly I spoke loudly and assertively to my empty closet and told the entity to leave. Update number 3, nothing has happened still, but I found out some really unfun news. Apparently the previous owner of this house committed suicide. I wasn't able to get any more information than that. That does not make me feel any better. I don't know if they were in the house when they did it, or if they were male or female, or if it is related at all. I will update this post if anything ever happens again. I tried to make another thread to update everyone, but the mods took it down. Maybe some of you will see this comment. I left the house. I drove up to Sacramento to stay with a friend for a little while, and even though they think I'm going crazy, they are being supportive. I was asleep in my room with the closet door closed securely as I could, which means I stacked some furniture in front of it. Lol. I was woken with 3 very hard, and very loud bangs on the door. That was it for me. I was more scared this time than last. I took off. I don't even think I locked the front door behind me. It was about 3 a.m. If a mod could please pin this comment to the top of my op, I would appreciate it. I don't know how Reddit works. That's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.